All right, so this video is a bit of a long time coming thing, but what I really wanted to do is document this project I made as part of my thesis work called Understanding What We Can Only Feel. It's part of a larger project that I call the Tactical Interaction Project. You can see and read more about it on my website, but basically, Tactical Interaction Project is a bike-based system for engaging in tactical media and interactive tactical media. Tactical media being sort of this melding of art and activism using very DIY means for public interventions. So yeah, right now, today I want to look at Understanding What We Can Only Feel, which is a site-specific game experience, walking simulator, meant to be played on site at Ontario Place, which for a long time was this beautiful public space park. And recently the Ford government here in Ontario has sold off the West Island to a private mega spa company called Therme, and there's a lot of issues around this, but basically they've leveled the entire island, what was there, and to make way for this spa. So as someone who grew up in Ontario and visited Ontario Place multiple times as a kid and really enjoyed it, this brought a lot of feels and nostalgia out, and a lot of questioning about this space that was lost. So I kind of wanted to make this poetic piece building off some of my previous work, using point clouds and making them explorable and interactive. I also, during my program, was introduced to game design and wanted to explore that as well. So I created this piece, and like I said, it's meant to be played on site, with the West Island of Ontario Place in the background, projected from the Node 1 bike system, and inviting people to play and reflect and memorialize in a way the space and what was lost. So yeah, like I said, it's a walking simulator. This is the sort of start screen. In a way, I wanted a bit of an onboarding process for anyone who comes up wanting to play it. And so it shows you the controller. I have one of these. It's a 8-bit DOE, kind of retro style controller. And so you can see the image of it there, and it shows you sort of the controls. So you've got one joystick that moves you left, right, backwards, forwards. The other one pans around, your field of view. And then these clickers on the backside hover up and down. I've done a fair bit of drone work in the past, and it just felt like a very intuitive. I mean, anyone who games also kind of knows this control, but it's also very similar to like a drone controller, and that's very much what the movement feels like. And as you see, like even on this intake screen, you can kind of practice the movement around and get a feel for it before you actually start into the experience. So I should say too, before we begin, a lot of this was kind of based theoretically too and grounded in the idea of hauntology, coming from Mark Fisher, especially Mark Fisher, someone I had touched on a lot in the past. After reading his book Capitalist Realism, this idea that it opens with, and this quote has been attributed to either a couple of Slavoj Žižek or Frederick Jameson, but this idea that it's easier to imagine the end of the world than the end of capitalism. And this has really stuck with me. And in the process of making this, I was going further into Mark Fisher's writings and digging into his concept of hauntology, which is this idea of lost futures, not just the ghosts of the past that haunt us, not just that nostalgia for what was lost, but in the past, but also what was lost in the future by the selling off of, public lands. So that really influenced this work. It really kind of explained a lot of those feels I was feeling, and directed it. Also in the concept of game design, and the idea of critical play outlined by Mary Flanagan, I really wanted to look at, hi Harvey, really wanted to look at ways that like could bring that concept of hauntology into the gameplay, and we'll look at that a little bit as we begin. But we got a friend here to help. Such a good helper. But yeah, let's get into it. So like it says on the landing screen, X to continue. So when we hit X, you'll see the map rises up and out. And for anyone who's familiar with Ontario Place and ever been there in the past, you can kind of really see what's going on. You can see the Cinesphere and the pods over there in the background. Those are still standing, but I decided to leave them in here in the map because they really give a sense of place. Here you can see we're kind of in the middle of the village area. And yeah, this is a whole map of the Ontario Place West Island. So we pan around. I'm rising up as well, so we get a bit of a better aerial view. You can see the silos there in the background, if anyone remembers those. I mean, when I was growing up, I remember them being home to what was called I believe it was called the Mega Maze, and it's sort of this really interesting interactive. You run through each silo, and it's a different, very weird, surreal kind of environment. And you're timed as you go through, hitting checkpoints till you get to the end. The idea of that game also kind of inspired this work as well. And yeah, you can see over there. And then at the top left, you can see there's a timer bar. This is adjustable, and I've played around with this a bit. The first time I showed this publicly, I had it as a 5-minute timer, but that almost felt too long. People kind of got lost in it. It didn't really hit in the same way, but what that timer kind of represents, you can see as it's going and down. You can also see in the background there, if you look out towards where the Cinesphere is, everything's slowly flattening down along with the time. This was sort of the major component of critical play gameplay that I came up with. I needed something to drive forward, like an endlessly explorable, place is one thing, but from a game perspective, you need something to drive it along. And so this idea of the timer and the flattening of the map really fit well and reflected well that concept of loss. And so that's it. So right now the timer is set to 2 minutes. I thought that kind of made it a little more playable, kind of enhanced that concept. And thing is, it just brings you right back to the start screen, so you can always restart again, hit X to continue. So if you want more time to explore, you can do so very easily, but it really instills that sense of loss and a drive to move forward and explore. Partially inspired by another Toronto artist who made a game called Loser Lane in response to Doug Ford's attack on bike lanes in the city of Toronto. If you ever play that, I'll put a link in the description, but if you play that, you're sort of a pixel character trying to dodge cars and doors opening in the street. It's really neat, but the gameplay is like very hard to get beyond 10 seconds into the game. You just keep losing over and over again, hence Loser Lane. But so this was partially inspired by that. So you're probably wondering, what are these orbs that I'm kind of hovering around? Well, part of it too, initially I was batting around the idea of including a bunch of archival photography and imagery of the site before, but that just felt kind of a bit too didactic on the head, whatever. And then I found this document through futureofontarioplace.org, and it was a design charrette produced by the Toronto Society of Architects before the lease was given off to Thermaid to build this mega spa. They held the design charrette where groups got together and kind of worked together over a period of time to develop future ideas for the future of the space, hopeful public ideas. And so I drew from that document. There's a number of the orbs around the map that you can see. And yeah, each of these orbs, checkpoints, contains a quote from that document. So here we go. Ontario Place is a landscape for constant reinvention, so we can have an active space for making our future Ontario. Like, beautiful. And who doesn't want that, you know? Unless you're benefiting financially from this mega spa or you have no heart. You know, we want something public. It was a public space. We want it to remain public, and it's just sad that we've lost that. So the inclusion of these quotes, you can see I'm going to travel over another one here. As you can see, this is as fast as you move. This is adjustable in the back end, which we'll dive into later. But I like the idea of slow travel. It really, you know, it lends itself to contemplative and exploration. And yeah, so I mean, it's adjustable, but I like this idea of slow movement. It also kind of, this idea of slow human paced movement really contrasts with the quickly lowering timer. But here we go. Here's another quote. Ontario Place has become isolated from the city, and the time has come to resurrect the connection between the province, the city, and the site to bring it back to life. Yeah, agreed. Yeah, so each of those orbs contains a quote similar to like that. Different hopeful envisionings of the future of the space, which really speaks to that concept of hauntology. So these were all things that were lost, right? Beautiful visions that were lost. Yeah, let's speak a little bit about the audio that you're hopefully hearing as well. I'll bring it up a little so it's a little more audible. But what I did for the audio, I created this myself, is I found also through futureontarioplace.org links to archival footage and promotional videos for Ontario Place that were made in the past. And so I took those and sampled them and ran them through, brought them into Ableton and ran them through some different granular sampling and reverb to create these sort of soundscapes. So the first one you hear is birdsong, mostly a bit of waviness, a bit of other ambient noises that were collected from the site and start off one of the videos. But you'll see as you move closer to an orb, a second audio track kind of picks up and comes into play the closer you get to the orb. And that was the second video of the children's place that was a big feature in the past of Ontario Place, the children's playground. So yeah, the combination of the two kind of drives the interaction as well, but also really adds that sort of ambient, experimental, exploratory state, which I really like. Yeah, so that's really really sort of the gameplay. And it just kind of goes on and on like that until, I don't know, you get bored, you give up, you're ready to let go of what was and what could have been. Maybe I'll speak quickly too about the map itself. So I don't think I've mentioned yet, I made this whole thing in Touchdesigner, and that's what we'll be doing next, is going to the back end and looking at how I use Touchdesigner as a game engine. But the map was taken actually from the Ontario Geohub, which is like publicly available LiDAR maps. And they have them for most of the province, and within the city of Toronto, there's like every couple of blocks is broken up into a different section. But so yeah, so this map was taken in 2019 of the space. So you can see it before it was fully demolished and leveled. You can see all the old buildings. You can see a lot of the trees, the silos. And yeah, I thought that was really interesting, and just it made this whole thing possible. I've been playing around with, scans that I had made up in the Yukon in different ways, but I really wanted to make this piece respond to Ontario Place, and finding this slider map was what made it possible. But not right away. I found this slider map, but it took me a long time because the file format is .las, really meant for like geospatial work. It really took me a long time to get it into a format like PLY that I could bring into Touchdesigner. So I used a program called Cloud Compare, which is free, open source, and is meant for working with point cloud data like this. But it took me a long time, and I'm still not totally sure what I did, but it was a lot of fiddling around with settings and exports and whatever to get it into a format that I could work with in Touchdesigner. And then even then when I did figure that out, it wasn't until Touchdesigner released this experimental build, I think around June, this experimental build of Touchdesigner with a whole new operator family. If you've used Touchdesigner, you realize how big of a deal that is. If you haven't, just know that it was a really big deal, this release of the point operator family, which literally was like what made this. Like, this is a large map, a lot of points, and wouldn't have been possible without the point operator family, POPs for short, that would take this data over to the GPU and accelerate it. Like, a map this size would not have been workable with, but luckily that came out kind of right as I was working on this and was the key to unlocking it. So yeah, with that said, let's maybe dive into the back end of Touchdesigner and look at what's going on there. So here we go. This is the main page, main network for the whole simulator. Big part of creating this, I drew from Marques Carrington, who has a whole free tutorial series on YouTube explaining how he used Touchdesigner to create a game engine in a very similar style, a walking sim sort of thing. Lots of detail there, lots of interesting stuff, a lot of gaps too that I kind of had to figure out on my own, but that really provided the foundation and basis for creating this system. So it all kind of starts with the up here at the top, the FCP input. Here there's both, like, you can see the joystick input, which tracks what's coming in off the joystick. So as I move, the controller, you can see like x-axis, y-axis, rotation. And I also had it so that there's keyboard input as well. So if you don't have the controller on, you can do all these movements from the keyboard. But it's a lot more fun, enjoyable, intuitive to kind of do this with a controller if you're, someone who's used to gaming or flying drones. So anyways, this is the whole system there. There's a bit going on. Just to clean it up, select the channels that we actually need, a bit of math to make it usable amounts, and a bit of lag in there. Actually, that comes further on, but yeah. So it all starts with the input. That comes out back to the main level. So we're tracking button presses, what happens when we move each button. Yeah. Then big part of making this happen was taking this input from the controller and applying it to the camera. So it's not just as easy as like in Touchdesigner you have cameras. It really wasn't easy as just like porting these movements over the camera. It doesn't quite work like that. So this is something took me a long time to figure out, but drawing from Marques Carrington is this whole system of basically it ties the movement to the rotation of the camera so that it stays in place. Without this whole system, that would kind of fall apart, but he did a lot of the hard work, heavy lifting and math to figure that out. And yeah, I'm not going to dive too in deep depth into it. Watch this tutorial if this is something you want to figure out on your own. But yeah, so these button presses drive the movement of the camera, which I guess we can look at next. Yeah, basically this whole location control translates each of the movement into a spatial area. As you can see, TX, TY, TZ, and RX, RY, the rotation, and place in space. And that's what drives the camera down here in the map. So there's a lot going on here in the map container. We'll start up here. So point file in, this was, you know, the Ontario Place map. I had to do a bit of transforming to get it centered on the axis and in the right rotation. That's probably something I could have done exporting out of Cloud Compare, but I don't fully understand the software. So anyways, it took me a while to get it in here and then a little bit of fidgeting to get it centered, but I got it there. From there, we have a lookup texture. So as you can see, like it just came in as sort of white data, but there is a point attribute for color coming out of Cloud Compare, and so I was able to use that and use the lookup texture, and then I could drive that using color ramps and noise. So actually, like, I have a couple other, like, this can change. You can change this very easily using a switch, but yeah, a couple different other like color palettes for the space you can kind of see there. But I kind of settled on this one. It felt like most maps. I think this is based on the later LiDAR data, like the depth and density maybe. But this color scheme that I landed on, really, it accented the trees as green and just kind of, you know, felt the most natural while still being very unnatural. But yeah, that's the coloring. And then we go into the next node, which is proximity. This is, so point clouds come in looking like this, right? Just a bunch of points in space. And so each point there has location data, you know, where it is in space. And this proximity node is really cool. This is something that came in with the POP operator family, but basically you just set it, it creates connections between points. So you can specify like the number of points that each point connects to, and it just draws lines between points. And so there's a couple settings you can adjust there, but that really, like, as you can see, kind of really, like, this is something, but this really just gave shape to the space, and I just think it's so beautiful. Like, functionally it added to the form, but aesthetically I think it looks really cool and has sort of that futurism aspect of it. But yeah, I added in a bit of noise just to give, you know, a bit of breath of movement and life. So you can see here, without the noise, with the noise. Once the ground collapses, you don't see it, but as we restart again, I'll kind of demonstrate what's going on. Maybe you noticed it already, but I'm just going to highlight it again. So as we start, drop through the ground there, but you can see sort of the slow undulation of the ground and all the points. It might be easier if we, so there, you can sort of see the points affected by the noise slowly undulating. And if we turn off, everything's static. I just liked that it gave a nice little bit of life and breath, and added a bit more to that abstract ambient nature. I just love noise. In general, I love using noise in Touchdesigner in a multitude of ways, whether it's color or shape or movement. So it just felt natural to put it in there. And then lastly, we have this limit node, and that's what drives the map collapsing. And so if you come down here, it's all driven by a timer. So that's the timer that you saw in the top left corner. That's the gameplay function that drives the game. But that's simply just linked to the maximum value of the limit up here. And that's what drives the map falling down. And we'll see too, that comes out later. But yeah, so that's really like the back end of the map. And that just runs into a geometry node, represented by point sprites, like you use Touchdesigner, you know, like a cam system into a render. And so I actually have two separate renders going on with the same camera looking at them. One is for the map itself, and then the other is for milestones. There's a simple note in here. The milestones, or the quote spheres, orbs, whatever you want to call them, are represented by you know, simple orange spheres, and they slowly float up and down. I just use the LFO on the y-axis translate, and so that's gives, again, a lot like the noise, gives it a bit of life, a bit of motion, just makes it a little more interesting. Yeah, so that's the milestone visualization. Visualization. I use a composite to put that orb render on top of the map and played around with this a bit. You know, you can use different operators, and you get different colors for the orbs. I just like that. I love difference, and I just love the way it kind of, yeah, works on the, against the coloring of the map. And what else? Composite that with, I don't know, I had some other renders going on here. I'm not sure what that is. Oh, I did a bit of work on creating like an overhead map. In the end, I decided it probably wasn't that necessary, but it is an option. It shows that, you know, bird's eye view, so you kind of know where you are within the map as a whole. You can see the milestones, the orbs represented on the map with orange dots, and you can also see you as the player represented by the blue dot. You can see it slowly moving around there. Yeah, that took a bit of work, but decided not to use it in the end in this iteration, but it's there. It's something. What else do we have? A bit of transform. I don't think that's really doing anything here, but it's there just in case, you know. Yeah, what else is going on in this map system? This down here is all the timer function, and so there's a bit of finagling there, so that it gives you actually, you can see there it just changed over to done, so that triggers when the timer finishes. It brings up the UI, and then removes it when the UI is not there. That's just a little bit of logic driving that. And yeah, so let's go back out to the main level. There's a bit going on here with milestones. I won't dive into this too much, but because Marques, this is straight out of Blake's tutorial series, but basically this is just a system so that you can, based on where the camera's at, you can drop in a milestone. So at one point in making this, I literally went to the location of this orb and hit this button, and that dropped a location value in there. And then based on that location value, now it holds that. These are the locations of all the orbs, basically. And so we can look that up. We can determine, you know, and Blake goes into this in greater detail, but you can determine which checkpoint you're closest to, and also the distance from whatever checkpoint you're closest to. And so that I used a proximity to determine, you know, here you can see we're tracking distance. And once we hit a certain distance from a checkpoint, from the center of a checkpoint, that location on the map, essentially, you can see the logic flips on. Once we get under, I don't know, what is it, one unit from the center, that logic flips on, and that brings up the quote. So yeah, that's the milestones. That comes out here. You can see current zone, which we're not really using here. Actually, we are, because that drives which quote comes up, and then proximity, when that triggers on, that brings up the quote itself. So yeah, that current zone, actually those feed into a few things. So there's the quotes, and each of these I created a text top for each quote, and that's just driven by a switch depending. So yeah, which zone we're in determines which quote we switch over to, and then when the proximity kicks in, that brings up the level here. So you can brings up the opacity level of the text top. So that's what drives that system with the quotes coming up. We got a bit of zone audio. This I didn't use, but you could, in theory, like each orb has a different audio that comes in as you approach it. I just went with the 2 audio tracks here. So one is the constantly playing bird song, and the other is the sort of children's place that picks up as you approach an orb. You can see as I get close to this orb, the volume on that second track kicks up. And yeah, so that's how I drove the audio. Hit tracking, I didn't use this, but this will let you know, like, if you wanted to have a feature where you could say, like, you know, quote 1, quote 2, quote 3, quote 4, and then track as each one has been hit and viewed. You could do that through here. This was a system I kind of developed. It's still a little janky, and I didn't use it in the end, but this kind of allows you through logic to determine which checkpoints have been hit and which haven't. And yeah, down here, yeah, this is the audio proximity. What else do we got going on? Up top here, we got a couple. This was for my development purposes when I was tracking like which zone I'm in, which milestone I'm closest to. We also had like, okay, proximity, and that should kick in when we hit. So that was just used for development stuff. This is just a number representation of the timer. This comp allows us to combine the quotes and the map. And yeah, we just got a little bit of UI going on here. That timer in the map container is driving this UI. And so yeah, you can see I started with a horizontal timer, but the vertical one just felt better, like a health bar kind of thing. Yeah, there's that, and then it all just comes together into the out. So, and this switch here is what, when the timer does run out, that's what brings up the controller, the controller home screen again. You can see it's indexed to lag 1. So you can see that kicks in. It's got a bit of lag on it, just so that, you know, it doesn't suddenly appear. It kind of slowly appears. So the opacity slowly comes up. So it's a little less abrupt. This is something I learned a lot. Like, you know, lag is used a lot in game design. Just makes it more humanistic. But yeah, that's really it. That's kind of a speed run of the front end, back end of this game. Depending on interest, maybe I'll dive deeper. But yeah, here's the controller. I literally just took a picture on my phone of this controller, and then just did a bit of in like the preview app for Mac. Literally just like grayscaled it and added the text and arrows. Just a little leveling to make it a bit brighter. Transform to center it where and like size it to the screen properly, and that's just composited on top. And then the switch just brings it in when the timer runs out and drops it off when you hit X to start again. So yeah, that's really that's it. That's understanding what we can feel in a nutshell. And so yeah, I'm really proud of this game. this experience. Hoping, I mean, the weather's turned now. It's kind of cold. I missed my window maybe a little bit, but hoping at some point to actually put this out, bring it out in the wild, and bike down to Ontario Place or nearby it and gather some people, so folks to try this out on site. That's the dream. And maybe create some more kind of similar works. I don't know. We'll see. But yeah, that's it. You can read more on my website, jklynk.com. That's JKLYNK.com. Hopefully making some more videos of these to show off other aspects of the Tactical Interaction project. And also working on sort of a more condensed zine version of my full thesis that's more digestible. You can read some of the stuff on my website right now. But yeah. If you're watching this whole thing, thanks for watching. Maybe it was useful, hopefully. Maybe it was interesting, hopefully. I don't know. But yeah, that's it. Peace. Thanks for watching.